Hey everybody, welcome back. Brian Fox here with your coronavirus real estate report, where we're going to talk about what the economic recovery could look like. I say could because at this point everyone is simply trying to guess and make their best estimate of what's to come next, but we want to show you at least what the different models of recovery are so you can pay attention to the world around you, so you can figure out if you think you know what you're about to go through, so you can anticipate and behave differently if you need to. So the first would be the Z shape. So as the most optimistic model, by the way, but in the Z shape, the economy suffers a downturn during the pandemic, but then bounces back up above the level it would have been in a pre-pandemic baseline. As pent-up demand creates a temporary boom in the scenario, a good part of the GDP foregone during lockdowns, the shopping we didn't do, the restaurant meals we didn't enjoy, the trips we didn't take, was simply delayed and is made up once the risk of the pandemic passes. So the point is that we talked about this in a previous video, but demand goes way down, but it's still there. It's just incubating, and then once it unleashes itself, everyone tries to do everything all at once, and therefore the economy rises very sharply above the original baseline and then comes back to normal and continues to where it was. The next one would be the V-shaped model. This is still a very optimistic model. The economy permanently loses the production that would have occurred absent the pandemic, but very quickly returns to its pre-pandemic baseline once social distancing is lifted. Trips not taken, restaurant meals not purchased, and concerts not attended are foregone rather than delayed, but once life returns to normal, everything is just as it would have been before. So that means basically this time we're going through, it evaporates. Nothing happens, but we go right back to where we were before. Somewhat pessimistic model would be the U-shaped model, and probably more likely, the efforts of the pandemic on economic activity last well beyond the end of the social distancing, and the GDP recovers slowly. Even after the health risks recede, the economy still doesn't quickly go back to where it would have been, though it does get there eventually. This basic story has many possible shapes. In the U-shape, the level of GDP stays low for a while, perhaps because social distancing norms last a long time, but then recovers back to a baseline slowly. So in essence, what this means is we have a sharp decline, which we have experienced, and it just takes time for everything to get back on track. Another way to look at this is momentum. If it's a train moving in one direction at a very high velocity, which our entire country has been on an economic scale, we've been moving fast. Everyone's been making a lot of money, there's been a lot of things going on, and then it stopped abruptly. And it may take us some time to get back moving the same direction as it was. The alternate to this model is actually here. It's called the Nike swoosh model. And in the swoosh model, which is obviously borrowed from the Nike logo, the economy starts to bounce back sharply as restrictions are lifted and economic activity increases, but consumers, businesses, and state and local governments are still hesitant to spend. And it takes a long while for the economy to get back to pre-pandemic trajectory. Means that it moves back, but it takes some time for people to want to go and spend that money again. And that is a more likely conclusion. Also possible is the W model. In the W model, its response to the pandemic is a first round of openings that is followed by a surge of COVID-19. So what that means is there's a sharp decline. We open back up, and so the economy goes up, but then it turns out we have way more cases of coronavirus than we thought we were going to have, and it drops down dramatically again, and we have to go through the whole process again. And then the most pessimistic model is the L-shaped model. The pandemic has a permanent effect on GDP, lost investment during the crisis, a rethinking of global value chains, a permanent change in fiscal policy, and a slowdown in productivity growth all have the potential to cause the trajectory of the GDP to be lower than it otherwise would be. This is basically what the recovery from the Great Recession looked like. Despite the fiscal stimulus of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009 and all the efforts of the Federal Reserve, it took 6 years for per capita GDP to return to 2007 levels, and the real GDP is still well below pre-recession projections. So the point to that is, this is what we went through in the Great Recession 2006-2007 era, and it's had to start all over again. But in that system, the banking industry completely collapsed. Real estate had a giant leg taken out from under it. This will, I think, be different. However, there are going to be effects that take place. Right now, you can point to any one of these and say, yeah, we're going through that right now. Yeah, we're going through that. That feels like that too. And there's warnings about all of it. So I guess the best piece to take from this is that these are all on the table. We know they exist. If you ask any professional economist or person in the presidential White House staff, they're going to say there's warning signs for each one of them. We have to pay attention. And I guess that's the best advice I have for you today, is that depending on the industry you're in, you might have a different economic model. If you're in the restaurant industry versus the real estate industry, in real estate, we're seeing that there's a bit of a spike of business now versus restaurants, who some of them are getting a lot of business and some of them are having a real tough time or maybe already out of business, as are other service providers. Disneyland, arguably one of the most marketable products out there, everyone wants to be there, no one can go. And so it has a different model that you would put in here. So the point is, pay attention to your world. How does this affect you? And bring it all back to real estate. You want to watch these things because the amount of money that funnels through each one of those economic models may have a direct effect on how your investments work. So again, Brian Fox here. It's always our goal to reduce the anxiety that comes from the uncertainty of this information through education. We really want to help you to make better decisions moving forward. If there's anything you need, you can reach out. Again, these are opinions. They are to be researched. If you have any further questions, we're happy to help. Once again, Brian Fox, and I'll see you next time.